Tariffs have been making headlines for months.
Trade tension remains. How will this impact the region? Welcome to Two Analysts, One Hat,
where the questions are random, but the
insights
aren't.
Explain what is tariff to someone in preschool.
Well, imagine you are going to buy a bowl of noodles. The noodles cost $1, and now someone decides that you have to pay a 20-cent fee on top of the $1 for the noodles. That's what a tariff is. What are the global implications of the tit-for-tat bilateral tariffs between the US and China? I think there is two aspects to it. First, of course, financial markets didn't like the uncertainty. So the uncertainty is translating into financial market volatility, whether it's in the equity space or currencies or bonds. And I think secondly, on the real economy side, businesses are actually trying to figure out what it means in terms of their market access, how should they price goods going forward, and whether there will be potential disruptions to the supply chains. So they may temporarily hold off some decisions for capex and potentially also hiring intentions.
If tariffs were a movie villain, who would they be?
Oh, I know, Pac-Man. They just chomp, chomp, chomp and eat up everybody along the way. How have recent tariffs affected your earnings forecast for companies in the impacted sectors?
Just a look back to what happened earlier in the year. If you take a look at the earnings forecast, we're going for about single-digit growth for 2025. Unfortunately, this is not the case. Taking into account the fact that there could possibly be a slowdown in terms of demand and also the impact on all the other industries as well. Earnings have been gradually cut in the last couple of weeks, and of course now, based on current projection, we're going to see a slight decline in terms of the earnings for this year. If Singapore imposed a tariff on one imported food item, which one should it be and why?
Singaporeans are such foodies. Yeah. We should not impose any tariffs on food items.
On food item, that's a no-no. Definitely not on durians, one of my favorite food. Yeah.
No. I think there will be a big outcry over that. iPhones, online shopping and groceries. How will tariffs affect the cost of living and consumer goods in Singapore? I think for Singaporeans, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Goods that are coming into Singapore will not be affected by the US tariffs. If anything, maybe the Chinese exports that were originally meant for the US market may have to find different markets to sell to, which could include this part of the world and Singapore. So we actually may enjoy cheaper Chinese goods, for instance, in the short term. Our ASEAN neighbours have actually been hard hit by the tariffs, and how will this affect the manufacturing industries and regional supply chains? Well, there are a few ways to look at this, because in terms of the reciprocal tariffs that were announced on April 2nd, some of our ASEAN neighbours like Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, for instance, face very high tariff levels. That said, they have been put into a 90-day suspension period, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with negotiations with the US administration. But I think in the interim, a few things are happening. There is already some front-loading of exports for the impacted industries even prior to this announcement. Secondly, I think a lot of manufacturers are scrambling to see how they can actually diversify their supply chain to avoid any disruptions. They're looking at alternative markets that they can sell their goods to.
Apart from manufacturing, other sectors could also be impacted as well. For example, like services and banks and all that, because they are also supplying to all these industries as well.
What strategies would you recommend to investors, and are there specific stocks or sectors that you believe are worth considering, Carmen?
The Sing dollar is very strong versus a lot of the other currencies. So if Sing dollar is your predominant currency in this environment, in fact, you will actually enjoy currency gain as well as the gain in terms of the whole stock market returns as well. In terms of the dividend yield, Singapore stocks on average give you almost close to 5%. And in fact, in the last 2 years, Singapore stocks actually give you a dividend yield of almost close to 6%. So that should also be one of the fundamental reasons why you want to buy into the Singapore market. So do consider Singapore stock, but more for the medium to long term, and just be mindful of the fact that for the short term, most sectors will still be very vulnerable. But over the longer term, I think some of the more established, domestically focused companies should do much better than the companies which are more export dependent.
Tariffs are not just taxes, they are reshaping how we look at the world, supply chains, and also asset prices. So for investors and businesses, you have to stay nimble.
It is going to be very challenging navigating the landscape in the next couple of months, but do bear in mind that equities are really long-term investment, and it is good to take advantage of lower prices to accumulate quality stocks.